And now, Podtendo presents Final Fantasy IX. In this retrospective, we're going to be doing a deep dive into characters, some of the thematical elements, and just what makes this game so fantastical. Please enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to Podtendo's Final Fantasy IX. Maybe it was called in the last time I said Final Fantasy VII, but oh baby, you better believe we're talking about Final Fantasy IX, specifically Disc 2. So as we journey through the last great adventure on the PlayStation 1. Cool. We're going to be discussing the pop cultural landscape that this game was released in. Nope, that was a different one. I didn't change that. We're going to be talking about the development details of this game, talk about the story, the misadventures found on Disc 2, and finally, we're going to discuss two, not of the worst characters, but middle characters. So we did kind of a character draft. That's kind of, we're going through like a character study at the end of our show. So we're going through our round 3 picks today. And potentially, so round 3 picks today. And that is what we're getting. Oh man, remember when we talked about Disc 1 3.5 months ago?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
That long?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. It was only. But this is now coming out in August, and I think our other show was June. So we missed all of July.
Nailed it.
Right.
Nailed it. But this we're going to continue because we were finishing this up. We just got a bit distracted with some X-Men, I believe, or something.
No, it was just Goonies. We just needed a break over July. We were both kind of busy with summer plans and stuff. So, and
such is life.
Now I think we kind of power through and like we get 2 shows of Final Fantasy in August, and then we're done in September. So now we're kind of caught up. So we don't remember the first show, neither do you, but you go back and listen, and you can be caught right back up. Unlike us, we could have done that before we started recording, but we can't now, so now we're just stuck in this stupid time zone where we talk about Final Fantasy IX that was developed by Square, sold 5.83 million copies, released July 7th, 2000. How long to beat has this game at 38.5 hours? Price on eBay is $66 for an original disc set, and on eBay or eShop price is $28. I can say stuff like that now that we're like getting into the show, right? So now we all remember.
And the stuff goes on sale all the time. So just like if you want it, throw it in a wish list, and I'll remind you when it goes on sale.
Perfect. So where to play. Yeah. And guys, lots of options on this one: PS1, Android, iOS, Windows, PC, PS4, Nintendo, Switch, and Xbox One. So readily available if you're interested in kind of diving into this game. And as we go through the retrospective, maybe it piques your interest, or maybe you're like, I kind of remember playing it. Let's listen to these clowns talk about it for a bit, and then you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm good. All right, I don't need that.
Yeah, maybe. This game, I think I've had some revelations about it, but I'll save it.
Okay.
Because I don't even know how this game was developed next. So why don't we go through the development details and
now I
get all caught up.
Previously in the past, when we did these retrospectives, like we started with some bigger games, right? So Final Fantasy VII, kind of a big deal in the gaming industry, right? Especially as you kind of work in like a linear fashion through kind of the history of video games, as we're kind of trying to do on this podcast. Ocarina of Time, again, another big game. The Majoras, the Wind Wakers, less critically acclaimed. Final Fantasy VIII, kind of a dumpster fire. Final Fantasy IX is good, but I don't think it's that upper echelon of like epic games. So hence why I don't feel so inclined to do like an epic retrospective. So we'll dummy our way through. So it's kind of just a 1 episode, and we've expanded it over 4. As a result, you're getting just little segments like Tyson alluded to. Today we're looking at just development details before we get into the level notes. And he's curious and chomping at the bit to figure out what's going on. So let's read through a wall of text and then make an awkward joke somewhere, have a comment, and move on with our lives. So planning for Final Fantasy IX began in July 1998 before Square had finished development on Final Fantasy VIII. So working on Final Fantasy VIII, and somebody's like, man, I'll be honest with you. Maybe we should start on the next one right away.
Or maybe that shows why Final Fantasy VIII's like a barely finished game. They were like, it's a thing. Ship it.
I guess. Like
let's all get back to working on Final Fantasy IX.
We're not going to do the time travel.
This is the fun game.
We're not doing the time travel thing anymore. Should we just like? Can we just start a new game that's good? Okay. Yeah. So now that we know that the mindset of developers, that's perfect because glad that they are aware. Sadaguchi envisioned that this game was a reflection on the older games of the series, stating that this game is ideally what Final Fantasy should be. The team worked in Hawaii, a compromise to have the developers work in America rather than Japan. They wanted to create a deeper story and a more fleshed out characters. This led to the creation of the active time event scenarios. They kept changing little and big details of the game throughout development. It was reported that they changed the ending of the game 7 times. The environments, well, any of those points need discussion?
I'm just gonna say, just like that is a legit compromise when you're like, look, let's work in Hawaii. Let's compromise on working in Hawaii. I feel like these developers knew they had the Final Fantasy cash cow, and they were so sick and tired and traumatized after working Final Fantasy VIII. They're like, no, we need to quote unquote compromise and work in Hawaii for the next edition.
Yeah,
it's like,
Squall just beat them to live. He's like, remember that line you had to write? I can't love you because you're not my mother. Like, what were we doing with our lives?
it's like, remember that god awful like mechanic, the game mechanic that someone greenlit along the way that was clearly busted and not very good. We just forced it. It made every battle monotonous.
You have to steal your magic spells. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I can't just.
And so if you use them, it's like a pain in the ass to go back and get it. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? It's like god awful. God awful.
So just as like a personal question, I guess we'll just get into it. Do you hate Final Fantasy VIII more than you like Final Fantasy IX?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right.
But that's like because every so often the game comes along.
I mean, you don't have to justify it. I also played Final Fantasy VIII. I understand. So.
Yeah,
okay.
But this falls in that same category of like ghosts and goblins for me, where it's like if I could just burn this sucker down, I would.
Okay. All right. Final Fantasy IX. Better than Final Fantasy VIII. Oh, baby. All right. So the environment was made more fantasy-oriented than its PlayStation predecessors by reintroducing a medieval setting. In the game world, steam technology is just beginning to become widely available. The population relies on hydropower or wind power for energy sources, but sometimes harnesses mist or steam to drive more advanced engines. Northern European mythology also inspired the game's settings. The main Final Fantasy IX website said the development of the game's world serves as a culmination of the series by blending the successful elements of the past, such as a return to the fantasy roots, with some newer elements. To accomplish this and satisfy fans who had become used to the realistic design of Final Fantasy VIII, the designers stressed creating characters with whom the player could easily relate. The characters had comic looks as a result, and in addition, the Dark Crystal was used as an inspiration for the design of the world and characters.
And that explains so much.
Oh, the Dark Crystals. Like, awesome movie, but also terrifying.
Terrifying. And that explains so much of the character designs. We're like, why is every character just horrifying? Like, they're kind of adorable, but they're horrifying.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you walk up and there's like, some crazy bird-looking creature, and you're like, I hate you, but you're the shopkeeper? Okay.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Every character looks just disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like nobody washes their hands. And even to a point where, like, they're just shapes. They're just sometimes, like, they're just monsters with shapes. And you're like, this is the world that we live in. And I remember even as a kid, we never, like, because everything was a CRT TV and it was kind of hard to, like, make out characters or whatever. So everything was kind of blurry. That's why, like, the FMV or the FMVs were like, so, oh my god, look, actual graphics. We can see what Cloud is up to. We can see what Zidane's up to. And like, that's what made Final Fantasy games amazing. But in this game, it's just sometimes there's horrifying monsters where you just can't figure out what it was. And I know for the longest time, I just didn't know what Freya looked like. She was just a thing under a hat.
Yeah. Well,
I could just not read what the actual, like, picture was on a crappy CRT TV. So I was like, sure, shapes and hats.
But I do wonder how much of that would be a function too of just not having like artwork released for this, right? Had we got an official player's guide with an art, right? Because lots of those times those player guides would come and they'd be thick editions and like here's an art compendium or stuff like that, or unlock the game, get the kind of all the graphic or so the concept art. You probably would have a better idea, especially as a younger child getting something like this and having those resources, right? Why do you think links to the past stays out in your mind? And you're like, it's a great world, it's magical. Well, because you had some comics that went with it and you had a manual with pictures, right? So you like built up the world more in your brain. So I wonder if just because you found this later, like post 10-11, you probably didn't have as much time like sitting in the back of a car just looking at this manual being like, okay, I'm gonna remember every single detail of Vivi's coat right now.
Yes,
right.
That's probably a good point.
Right.
That's probably a very fair point.
Versus had you have those, had you do the collector's things, had you been drawing more, right? Like you would have studied these characters and you'd be like, oh man, like Queena stands out, like they're the most influential character. Just a point, right? Just a thought on that. So
true.
But Dark Crystal, I'll be honest with you, if you haven't watched it, don't.
Terrifying. There's a Netflix.
Yeah, I don't know if that's any good though.
Others, yeah, but it's still got the same kind of like puppetry design.
Yeah.
So
Jim Henson, it's kind of cute, but still, it's just creepy. So this game's kind of creepy. But now that we know what the development details, I'm like, yep, okay, I see the Norse mythology, I see the fantasy, I see the Dark Crystal. All right, done. All right, let's see what's going on in this game. Did I do a story recap? I did not do a story recap. Oh no! So now we have to recap Disc 1 off the top of our heads. I believe it starts with an attempted kidnapping of a princess by a traveling theater troupe, which sees the theater ship land in a forest. They escape through a plane up to a little town, onto another airship, which sends them to the rival kingdom called something, where Sid lives. Lindbaum is the other kingdom, Lindblom, and it turns out that he was actually trying to capture the princess because Queen Braum, her mom, has kind of like gone insane and started kind of attacking people randomly, so he thinks there's something going on there. This leads our group to be divided at this point after kind of a big hunt in Lindbaum, and our characters find themselves going to Freya's kingdom, which is like something... Bermesia, yeah, where it's always raining. There they meet the queen, one of her high guards, Beatrix. They are defeated, and I think that's where the kind of first disc, like there wasn't a lot to it. Did I miss anything?
No, not really.
Maybe there's some nuance, like I think Garnet's trying to get back to, she wants to go back to her and talk to her mom because she's like, oh, this is just a misunderstanding, whereas the others are trying to carry on and... Oh, that's it. Bermesia comes to Lindbaum saying, we need help, we're being attacked. So they go to, like, help them.
Yes, and it seems Alexandria is using, like, it's these black mages.
Oh, that's right.
And it's sending them kind of, like, to go attack and kind of terrorize different places. So, and what is it? Sid in Lindblom and the queen... what's her name from Alexandria?
Braum.
Were the thing at some point, and she turned him into an Obglop or something like that?
No,
or is that
that's it. He has a different wife. He has a wife named Helga, who's like a witch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she shows up later, I think, and like resaves him. So it's Helga. It's a different woman. I think they're. Gotcha. I don't know the relations of these people. She says like uncle, so maybe Braum is like his Sid's like cousin or something.
Got you. Yeah. I was skipping through a lot of dialogue, so...
Yeah. So there you go. So there's your story recap. Pretty concise, eh? We do a nice job of bumbling through that one. So now we kind of know where we have two parties. We have a Garnet and her bodyguard Steiner. They're trying to get back to see the queen. We have Zidane and his little ragtag group of guys trying to stop this attack from Queen Braum. So those are our two stories, and that's where we pick up today. So we're going to start at the South Gate. Steiner is shown traveling with a large bindle and entering the South Gate. The bindle hides Garnet, and now, once inside, they can board a train. They can meet Marcus from Tantalus and travel with him to Trino. That's kind of the other third big city on this continent we're on, to make a super soft to save Blank, who was stoned in the forest. Cool. All right.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it makes it sound like he's a hippie. Um,
No, he's just a I don't know, just a kid going out for. He's an art student going out into the woods, trying to paint some trees, and
he's a university student. He's just stoned in the forest.
yeah, it's just normal. It's just a normal weekend in the summer. So, anything stand out from this part? I kind of feel like it's
no.
kind of a go forward.
Yeah, it's also kind of like just kind of catching up with what Steiner and Garnett are up to, and introduces Marcus a little bit more, and we kind of get to learn a little bit more of his motivations and how he's essentially only driven by trying to save Blank. So.
Sure, certainly. And Marcus and Blank, they do arbitrarily kind of join us periodically, right? Especially as our party changes throughout the narrative. They try and keep you somewhat on point, right? So I think actually Marcus and Blank might become party members for a hot second. But they're not like permanent party members. So this game's kind of interesting because they do have these people that just kind of jump in and out, right? Depending kind of where the story needs. So they're just more plot playable characters.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
And it's cool because sometimes a villain will all of a sudden join your party, and now you can start wrecking house with them. And it's very fun experience. It makes the combat super enjoyable because you're always getting these different varieties of and you get to see, like, as soon as you get a new character, like, oh, what skills and magic do they have? Because they're going to have all sorts of different stuff that you don't usually have access to, which is fun.
Yeah, it shows you kind of like different builds too, adds a bit more variety, like you said. RS. From there, though, Trino. So inside the nighttime city, the trio split up and explore the city streets. Eventually, they find Dr. Todd, an old companion of Alexandria and Garnet. They obtain the Super Soft, which Marcus takes to the evil forest, while Garnet and Steiner take an underground bug train, whoop whoop, to Alexandria.
Yes, because if you're not getting around by ships, you're getting around by giant underground bugs that you ride on the back of.
Fantasy. It's great. It's awesome. I love those kind of elements. They add a little bit more to the world. They seem more fleshed out. It seems like it's an old, ancient world that these people are now trying to make and claim as their own, right? And they have these giant underground networks that have snakes and bugs, and one of the reasons we love fantasy is for reasons like this, right? Just bug train.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in. Cool.
Yeah, well, it's also like if you think of of this world, kind of like would make sense if there's giant creatures all around you. It's like humans are going to ride these things. Like we ride horses because they're big animals and we can.
Yeah, true.
Like if we could harness giant bugs and giant like birds, we would. Like people been trying to ride, or people ride ostriches for Pete's sake. Like
people just want to ride things, even if narratively or conceptually it's stupid, it makes no sense. But like you could even ride a giant sandworm if you thought about it hard enough. In some fantasy stories,
it's true. As unrealistic as that would be, someone would do it.
It's probably a good way to train your whole family and party of like 100 people on the back of this giant worm. Sure, why not? Okay, that makes sense. All right, anyways, from there we go to Clara. After awakening from being attacked by Beatrix, Zidane's party leaves Burmecia and heads to the tornado-protected city of Clara. Once inside the storm, they find a tree, and on top of the tree is an ancient sacred Burmesian city of Clara. Clara? Freya, Clara. I don't know.
Clara.
Freya does a sacred dance. Vivi freaks out some women and children before Queen Brahm launches an attack on the city. Freya's old love shows up to defend the people while our party tries to protect the city. Beatrix once again defeats our group, and Odin is summoned and destroys the ancient tree.
Yeah, because apparently Odin's just essentially the nuke that Alexandria has been going around dropping on everybody. So that's fun.
Is it? Because this is the first one we show, and I think the next time we see like a Bahamut or something, it's just a summon, right? And
okay,
yeah,
I thought it happens one other time, but could have been mistaken. Yeah, and we get to meet Prince Puck. So the little rat guy that was hanging around with Vivi and snuck him into the opening theater production that we were doing as a con to steal the princess. Yeah. Turns out that guy's a prince from Burmecia. So pretty cool.
I love when the royalty that live in their high. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna go become a bum for the day. That'll show them I'm a normal person. Yeah. See.
Yes. Well, it's also like clearly Puck has been living in Alexandria for a long time, but it's like, did nobody go looking for him?
It just shows, like, it goes to show that throughout stories and history, like, just how unhappy people are. Because you could have everything. You could be literally a king and people, like, kiss your feet and lick your feet for you, and that's just a service you get on a normal basis. And you look at the streets and you're like, only to be a hobo.
Wish I could just sleep in those cold streets.
Oh, man, if I had
protection.
If I had a bindle and a cardboard box, boy, would I be happy. Hey, servant, keep licking my toes. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on. Princess Jasmine, Puck. I think at, like, Game of Thrones that happens at some point. Like,
I believe it constantly happens.
All the time!
Sure even in Dragon Age.
Let's go see
I'm playing...
the normal people live. Anyways, it's a trope. We see lots of tropes. It's a trope. So, yeah, cool little Puck. Poor little destroyed city. It sucks. Oh, also Freya. Remember how we talked about she's like searching for her old love? He shows up. Yep. That's the end of that story. We literally never ever hear or see of that story ever again. So Freya's arc's complete.
Yeah, and I don't remember you at all. Oh, he hit his head. That's right. Oh yeah, he hit his head. It's like
brains.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Good
cool.
stories.
Good times. All right. So into Alexandria. So our party escapes the city aboard an airship. They find out that Garnet is to be executed and teleport back to Alexandria. There, Steiner and Marcus escape a cage and reunite with Zidane. We fight through hordes of sexy soldiers in attempt to traverse the castle, find a secret passage, and travel to the depths to save Garnet, who has had her Edelions removed from her. That's like summons. So they just call them Edelions in this game, which also they might call in Final Fantasy VI.
They've used so many different names. I could not tell you.
Okay. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like the Eidolons or Eidos or like that suffix and prefix has been swapped around in so many different ways. Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of lay them all out so I could remember them, but
you know what?
It all just swirls in my brain.
It probably even goes back to Final Fantasy 2 or 4, whatever you want. Final Fantasy 4, let's call it that, right? Where, what's her name? Renea, the summoner, I think, Iridia, I think she's like a Idolion. Like we go to the Idolion's home or something, and they're kind of summoners. So again, it's been in this fantasy, it's been in the series for a while, so that should make sense. And then Beatrix, Freya, Steiner remain behind to allow the party time to leave via bug train. A snake monster chases us. We stop, or we miss the Trino stop, and end up being launched into Pinnacle Rock.
Yes. Some reason I don't really remember this part.
So apart from here that we just didn't talk about, so we hit on the Edelions, we got another stop on the bug train, whoop whoop, and the sexy soldiers. Yeah, so Beatrix, all of her armies are like these big Brazilian butt lift girls that have like thong armor, so their ass is just hanging out of their pants. And like in the HD remix, there's a couple times where like the camera's just behind them and their ass is just like shaking, and I'm like, all right. I kind of feel like it's just like perverted, right? Like there's no function of this, right?
Yeah, no, that's just strictly because the game designers were horny.
Yeah.
No real thing to this.
I know as a teenage puberty lit-written boy, they never stood out. But again, I was playing on an old CRT TV with my PlayStation, probably my PlayStation 2, right? So maybe the graphics were a bit better, but definitely the HD remakes. I'm like, whoa, that's a big ass butt right there. So good job, guys.
Yeah, the art designers were having a field day designing that.
Yeah, lots of.
And it just so happens it's like there's no guys running around in those outfits. It's like strictly like no cami butt outfit for all girls.
Yeah. So shout out to all the sexy NPCs out there. I mean, I didn't have any pure thoughts about video game characters. Poppycock on the Pinnacle Rock. We awake in a forest. Ramu, the summon, finds us and tasks us at telling him a story. We find some pages, tell him the story, and receive the summon. Outside, we see that Alexandria army attacking Lindbaum.
Yes. Poor Lemblom, because it is getting owned by all these black mages. But cool that Ramuts just chilling, hanging out in the forest, being a real cool guy.
An old Yoda type dude. I'm pretty sure you find all the stories, whatever it is, and then you kind of, he's like, tell me the story. I didn't read through them all, but you can kind of tell by like the context clues of the first couple sentences essentially what happens. Like the first one's like, once upon a time. Well, there's number one. And the last one's like, the end. So if you can figure out those four in the middle, easy.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And I think they all start with different first words. So and even if you're just like lazy, you can just write down the first word of all the sentences and then just tell the story based on that. Or read
it, and like the one's like, and he found a rock, and the next one's like, with his newly acquired rock, and I'm like, okay, that's number 2. Perfect. And then this one, he's like, and then he met his his friend Sarah. Sarah said, oh, perfect, okay, that's number 3. So it's about that difficult. However, after the attack, we enter Lindbaum. We find some supplies before Zidane meets Garnet atop of a tower. Here, the party along with Sid devises a plan to escape this continent and search out an outer continent. We are told to explore a march in search of some ruins.
Yeah. Kind of weird to go and see how just absolutely wrecked Lindblom is.
Yeah.
And because we were just running around here not too long ago. This is one of the first places we kind of got to. So it is, I think it's, we're starting to go into that darker chapter, which is, you know, I find I was very interesting. But, yeah, no, it's a good part. I think it's starting to really amp up the consequences.
Up until... certainly, and like up until the other thing we mentioned, I forgot to mention. There is a Steiner and Marcus are stuck in a cage. Back in Alexandria, we're gonna go back 2 sections, and you have to kind of do this like time you're swinging with them, right? So you kind of have to rock it back and forth so you can escape. Kind of difficult to do on the times speed multiplier on like the HD remake. So I would actually recommend slowing that down, and then it's not too bad.
Yeah, I found the same thing. And
yeah.
I was getting frustrated because I was like, why the hell are these guys always, or sometimes going, like, they'll lean in the opposite
with
direction.
And not.
Yeah.
And
you just have to make sure you're hitting it on, like, past the halfway mark of the backstroke.
Yeah, and you'll figure it out. But it's just one of those things that with again, creature comfort, nice to have the extra speed so you can kind of skip through a bunch of stuff, speed through sections you're not interested in. Just sometimes you need to turn it off, though, to solve puzzles and stuff, right? In terms of Lindbaum attack, it is, like Tyson said, we've kind of got our bit of our introduction, right? We got to see the world once over, and now we're seeing kind of the dark, gritty, the feeling the actual threat, understanding kind of the consequences of what's going on in the world, but just this war, right? And Alexandria happens to be kind of that impetus, right? Shows us like, oh, this matters something. I don't know why we're going to this outer continent. I think we're going to try and find the source of mist.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So off to find the mist, the wonderful wizard of mist. And that sends us to Fossil Rue. I love Fossil Rue. It's one of my favorite names. It's hilarious. So in Queena's Marsh, we discover the entrance to some ancient ruins. We solve some pump puzzles, travel via bug, it's always great, talk to a treasure hunter, a bounty hunter attacks us before solving the final pump puzzle and escaping on to a new continent. So Fossil Rue. It's a hilarious name.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat little dungeon. You get a go through a different area of the swamp, and you kind of come across like a giant, like what looks like the opening of a tunnel underground. And after playing a lot of Metro games, it's like, this is fun. This could be a lot of fun. I love going to like creepy old dungeons or creepy old tunnels or like Fallout games. Like,
sure,
this give me some sewers, more sewers in games. This is what.
Or like a Skyrim, you're walking along, so you're like, yo, is there some stairs going in that cave? And then it's like this old wizard's dungeon, and you're like, this is satisfying. I'm going to hang out here for a bit. So I do feel that. And Fossil Roo, I don't know why. Maybe it reminds me of like Kangaroo. That's what it is.
Or Dunkaroos.
Dunkaroos. Everything ends with Roo is awesome. So
Yeah.
Dunkaroos, Kangaroos, Fossil Roo.
Yep.
Nice. All right. On to the new continent, though. We're on to Conde Petit. On the new continent, we discover a village of dwarves. We explore the city and find Black Mage, who we follow back to his village. Okay.
Yeah. Is this the first time? No, we've seen dwarves before in Final Fantasy games. What am I talking about? But they seem to be very rare.
Yeah, they were in Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah, but they weren't like, there was none in 7, none in 8.
Because 7 and 8, though, were less fantasy and more kind of steampunk, high fantasy, more sci-fi.
That makes sense.
Right? Right, so I think that's why they said this game was going back more to the actual fantasy elements, right? So dwarves are northern European mythologies, right? Is where you're going to see more of that, kind of like the Tolkien's or like the North mythology. Yeah. So I think that's why we're seeing a return to dwarves in this game.
Makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Or I'm just really good at bullshitting. That's probably what happened. On to the Black Mage Village. So we solve a forest maze puzzle. I think we have to follow some owls before entering a village of escaped self-aware black mages. Vivi learns about his death before it is hinted that we must go to the other side of the dwarf village to stop Cujo.
Yes. Sorry, but whenever I think of the owls, I think of like, we're owl exterminators.
Okay, that's a good point.
I was like, whenever I see an owl, it's like owl exterminators.
Owl exterminators. Black Mage. Yeah. This is kind of one of the deeper parts of the game, and it kind of is where Vivi is a bit more fleshed out. He's portrayed as kind of a younger character, something like 10 to 12. He's got a massive magical power, and he kind of has to come to terms with the fact that he is created and must die, right? And he kind of has a bit of an existential crisis quite a bit here, right? So talking to the other black mages, just having them allude to, sometimes you just stop. And Vivi's like, what do you mean you just stop? And just your eyes go out and you stop. And they're kind of like, and that's just life. So kind of deep and concerning for kind of what is a cute little carefree character, but has a lot of depth and brevity, and we just have to kind of continue to watch his growth.
Yeah. And it is kind of sad to see the world that he's from, because it seems that like it is this almost race that is just getting sentience or seeming to like discover what sentience is. And it's fascinating because it's like, what is life after, and like, would something get consciousness and a sense of being, and how would that develop over time? The Nier franchise goes really into that, because spoilers, it's a lot about robots, and like robots that become kind of like self-aware of what they are, and they kind of build onto that, which is I always find a very interesting thing. Seems to always be in Japanese games that they explore this concept of like I guess, and even in Westworld they started doing that, like what happens when robots and machines kind of gain what it is to be self-aware, and like how does that flush out. So I love
just how things change in the natural order of things, right? And even if you create these black mages with a purely with the pure intention of just having a war machine, right? The fact you created, sometimes, a life finds a way, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's one of those things where you can't control all those natural things, and I love that concept explored, and having Vivi in our party being in such a cherished, innocent angel that we all love and should be protected at all cost.
Sure. And it's kind of nice that, again, they're not just side core, it's not just Barrett going and like fighting his friend Dane and being like, oh, I'll protect my daughter, and then he's kind of done. It's an ongoing, reoccurring narrative that we have to kind of face when we're looking at Vivi. And when you get a side mission with Vivi, it's usually about him learning about his place in the world and what the world looks like, and kind of just what his role can be and what he can expect, right? And changing those expectations. So it's kind of nice that we see this story develop and continue to go on, right? Like, I don't think this is the end point. He's not like, well, now that I know I must die, I must be the best black mage ever, and then he's just kind of like done, right? So it's nice that we get these little droplets along the way of kind of what our other characters are going through and what they're experiencing. And I don't know if I have anything else to say about that at the moment, because I'll be honest with you, I haven't played this game for like 2 months, so the fact that I'm doing this well, did you know that? At any point, did you question during this podcast, you're like, this guy doesn't seem like he knows what he's talking about?
Well, it's sometimes you can't lift the veil too much, but
well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyways, cool. So from there, we head back at Conde Petit. That's the dwarf village. Zidane and Garnet get married to pass through the village, and we see a young girl stealing from the dwarves. We fight along a mountain path, fight a giant, see a great tree, and find an ancient summoner village of Madame Sar. We meet a young girl named Iko, who lives there with some Mogs. She makes us dinner before agreeing to take us to the big tree, which is the source of the mist and cause for the monsters in all of the land.
Yeah, and she is just smitten with Zidane.
Yes, I think we have her age at some point, and she's like kind of young to be as horny as she is for Zidane, but
she also lives with Mogs, so I mean,
that's just my adult perspective. I mean, I imagine lots of not like, I imagine that's like a fantasy, or not a thing that children will do, right? Where they're like, we're gonna get married. And I'm like, well, I'm like 40 and you're like 8.
A
but
crush, or like your childhood crush or whatever
something.
it is.
Yeah. That's it's kind of an innocent crush that she's got going on here. And she's like, I'm going to marry Zidane. And that'll get him.
Absolutely. And Garnet's like, oh yeah, absolutely. No, you're going to. Mm-hmm. It's like, just add fuel to the fire. And it's it's kind of fun. It's funny. It's cheeky. I think it's clearly just there for jokes. And I don't think it's supposed to be taken very seriously, because obviously, like, Zidane and Garnet are, having the true romantic interest in the story. So
yes, yeah, and I think, I don't know. Do we talk? Let's see what the life a tree says, and then we'll come back to this, because. Do we learn anything about Garnet's backstory? Oh, yeah. Yep, I see it. Okay. All right. So Iko breaks the barrier around the tree. We move along the roots and enter the tree. Traveling down towards the center of the planet, we encounter the tree's evil spirit. He breathes mist and is the root of all the monsters in the world. With the monsters destroyed, the party awaits Cujo's appearance. We head back to Iko's home to recover a stolen locket. Iko gets kidnapped by a bounty hunter, saved by another, and we fight Amaranth. After defeating him, Iko is saved, the pendant is returned, Garnet recalls that she once lived in Madame Sar, and the party sets out to get Cujo while Amaranth joins the party. Back at the Life of Tree, the party confronts let's pause there. We'll pause at the back at the Life of Tree. Talk about that part. So, we get introduced to where we get to go to the tree. We learn about Garnet's backstory, as well as we get our last and final character joining our party in Amaranth.
Yeah. Well, and we've had this, we've seen cutaways to this to Amaranth and Lanny, the other bounty hunter.
Yeah.
And they're clearly not working together. They're clearly just hunting us. So we've beaten her a couple times, and then when Amaranth, or she tries to encourage Amaranth to fight us together, he basically just tells her he's like, no, I'm gonna take this down solely, kick rocks kind of thing.
Yeah.
And essentially,
he kind of has like a code. He has like a pride. He's kind of like the what do you want to call Mandalorian Boba Fett, right? He is like the scoundrel with a heart of gold after all, right? So kind of interesting. We've seen him a few times. He's a big blue looking guy with this stupid red hair.
Yeah.
Always looked weird. He looks more weird when you see him in HD, and I'm like, I kind of wish I didn't know what you look like, to be honest with you.
Again,
he's got a big claw.
One of those characters that's just like shapes.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, I see. Dark Crystal. Yeah, that's exactly what you look like. Learning about Garnet's backstory, right? So we've seen at the beginning, we saw a woman that looked kind of like Garnet with a baby in a boat. We saw something about like a city on fire with this big eye glowing above it. And that was potentially the attack on Madame Sari, which was a summoner's village by some evil force, right? Trying to destroy them, eliminate them as a threat, because there is someone out there that believes the summoners have this vast amount of power, right? So learning that that Garnet was from there is kind of cute. Although she doesn't have a horn, and summoners are supposed to have horns on their head. So I don't know, maybe there was like whole, like, remember the Dr. Seuss books about the star bellies? Maybe there was a whole racist thing going on in this world of like star heads and no star heads. And
Could be.
Right? Those racist summoners, I'm glad they got what was coming to them, those bastards.
Yeah, trying to exclude people.
Can't we all just live in peace?
Yes. Blame the summoners.
Blame the racist summoners. All right, I will. That's what I will. And the tree, I don't know. I didn't really get it. We were like, we're going to go fight the life. I'm like, I feel like the life of tree, cool. It's a cool trope, actually. This is one of those, like, those weird tropes. Giant trees. It's a cool fantasy trope. It doesn't get done a lot, but when it is there, I'm like, I like me a good big tree. It's kind of fun, right? This game example, like Great Deku Tree, and I feel like there's a couple other like JRPG fantasy games, and you have to climb a big tree or something, and you're like, this is cool.
Well, we just finished climbing a Burmesian secret tree hidden behind a tornado.
Oh my god!
This game love it. They're big trees.
Didn't Mystic Quest have a big tree?
I think it did too. It's like,
and you like fight it, and then it like moves, and it's like a platform, and it like walks across the screen, and that's how you get to like a mountain, and you're like, cool.
Kirby has a giant tree that's trying to fight you.
Yeah. See, big trees. It's a kind of cool little trope. It shows up here. Again, they're using all the hits, they're using all the classics, all the beats, any of the fantasy world, and this game actually might represent a lot of the elements. Maybe I'll put together a list here of just fantasy tropes that I think are neat, right? Like adding storybooks and like adding story elements and big trees and monsters and racist summoners. It's just kind of like all these really fun fantasy tropes that are being displayed through this game, right? So if you are someone that loves a bit more classic fantasy, medieval literature, this might be the kind of game for you, right? Because it's just going to hit so many like positive little itches. You're like, oh, maybe we'll go to an upside down castle at some point.
Yeah, well,
maybe we will.
Or how about the life of tree having lots of undead creatures in it? Isn't there something to be said there? Somebody, I'm sure some English major would love to write a paper about this.
Yeah. So from there, though, where do we stop? So back at the Life of Tree, the party confronts Cujo. We fight some spawns, get a Leviathan summon, and watch as Bahamut is summoned to fight Cujo. But some Big Red Eye is summoned to destroy Queen Brahm's forces, who are now attacking Cujo for some reason. And that is the end of Disc 2.
Yeah. Seems that Queen Brahm has had either a change of heart or realized that she's been told a lie, and Cujo is like secretly pulling the strings and just using her as a giant wrecking ball to go around and fuck everything up while he just sits in the back and bides his time. And doesn't Queen Brahm get owned by Bahamut here?
We don't know the devastation of the attack. I think that's like the start of Disc 3.
Okay. Well, I watched the end of that cutscene, so...
Potentially. Anyway, she's dead. She dies. I mean, we might start off the next disc discussing it. I don't know where exactly I stopped, but yeah, essentially she's killed. She has a realization of saying, sorry for what I've done. I was like under the spell. It wasn't exactly me. There's like a heartfelt goodbye between her and Garnet. She apologizes, and then she passes away, leading Garnet to return to Alexandria as the queen. Right now, the queen, she has the throne. It's kind of her army. So everything has kind of changed. We've defeated that threat, essentially. Halfway through the game, it's now how are we going to fight this new threat of Cujo, and what is he actually looking for?
Yeah. I feel like I played ahead maybe a fair bit, because there's some stuff that I did that we didn't touch on. But I'm gonna assume
Okay.
that comes later.
I might have saved a little bit too. I'm not sure how far ahead I got. I might have stopped as soon as possible to this, just because again I was like, but yeah, I know you're in the castle and you have to like walk around a little bit, and I think Garnet at one point is like, "Oh, I'm not on your party. I'm the queen," and then as you're leaving, she's like, "Joking."
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
When does Beatrix join your team and like her and Freya are wrecking stuff?
That's when you're trying to escape the castle, right? So.
Right.
Lindbaum, something, Pinnacle, Alexandria. So Beatrix, Freya, and Steiner remain behind to allow the party time to leave via bug.
Yes. Must have been. Yes, that part. That was like, okay, good. So we did touch on that.
I think the next scene is like a Garnet coming on a boat and Beatrix showing up and being like, "You have to come to the castle," and then you just kind of like run up a screen and you can save or something, like there's a save point. So you probably played as far as I did. So yeah, she's back at the castle, she's the queen now. That's where we'll start on the next disc, but we're only talking about disc 2, except for that time we talked about disc 1 and the time we just talked about disc 3. But other than that, just disc 2 in this episode, and that means we're done if that disc is over. So did we miss anything?
No, I tried to even double back to make sure that I was like, I remember this area. Did we even talk about this? Clearly we did. I was just not paying attention. So, I think we kind of covered all the fun stuff.
Yeah. I remembered things weeks later. It was pretty exciting. I was like, I actually kind of remember that and recall that. So kind of excited to get into the next discs just to see more of the fantasy elements that we're hitting on and finding out kind of more of what's going on in the story, right? Because we still have, I'm pretty sure disc 4 still has a lot of content. I don't think it's one of those just this is like end game and side quest stuff. So I think there is still some content on disc 4. So the fact we get 2 more discs of story, kind of excited to see where this goes. I'm not entirely sure. Pretty confident up until this point, and then these next kind of ones, I'm like, ooh, I'm excited for some new stuff, right? Don't really recall too much past this point in the game. So that's exciting for me. And as we're coming back with a bit more frequency, I can start picking it up, playing it, and I think it will help with the discussion going forward a little bit too, right? So, but unless Tyson has something great, grandiose, unimportant to say. It doesn't have to be great. It could be unimportant. I don't really care. Do you have anything to add before we get into our final cultural significance and look at our 2 characters here?
No, it's actually quite interesting that as soon as we started kind of going through all the notes, I was like, yeah, I remember playing all these things and having a lot of fun with it. But I know we were kind of making some jokes of like, I don't remember what happens, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
yeah,
no, I definitely do remember most of these things that happened. So it is pretty memorable. I think it kind of meanders a little bit, but there's a bit too much of just like, let's run over here, run over there. But I feel like it keeps the pacing going. This game does not feel like it drags, and like now playing it with a proper walkthrough and kind of knowing what to do, it's like this game is really fun. Like in a Final Fantasy game, it's so easy to be like, okay, and let me go running up this mountain, and it feels like sometimes like things take a long time. This game clips. Like if there's maybe a handful of scenes, like different like areas you can explore, and then it clips to the next area, and they keep that fairly tight. You're not like running around an area for forever. So I feel like it's super tight. Really well done, and I feel like this is it's a really fun time because it's so like tightly woven. So I'm really enjoying it, and I think that if you haven't picked that up and start playing along yet, you people listening at home definitely should. So it's a good time.
Solid. Nice. So that's kind of Tyson's little endorsement there, and awesome. So yeah, so like I said, we did cultural significance. So what we did on the back end here, rather than me kind of diving through, maybe I'll do something for the last disc, like disc 4, last show, as kind of a big kind of recap. Maybe some type of bit more thought put into kind of the ending of it. But we'll do that later. For now, all we'll do is we're going to look at 2 characters. So what we did was we did a character draft. So last episode, you got character 8, which was my pick, Queena, the last guy on the totem pole. Today, we're actually doing pick 7, which was Tyson's pick. We also looked at pick 6. So that was Freya, which was Tyson's pick. But story-wise, it made more sense to do 6 last episode and 7 this episode. Yep. And then we'll get to my 5th pick on this episode. So from here, we're going to look at character 6. So she was actually in the last run. We get Tyson's pick with Eco Carol. Tyson, why did you pick Eco over Queena? Was it like you're like cool or just meh?
Yeah, well, I always like having. I like summoners. They're fun. They're the tropes in Final Fantasy games I love the most. Usually, if there's a summoner, I try to squeeze them in my party and keep them in my party because it's like I'm not always gonna drop an Odin on you, but there's times where it's like I'm gonna drop an Odin on somebody.
So was Eco picked in the fourth round with your last pick because you just needed the summoner? And did you think she was like better than Freya, or was it just a function of, well, you were taking Freya and Eco and it didn't matter in the order?
It didn't really matter in the order. They're both kind of in that same ballpark for me, where it's like I love a Dragoon, I love a summoner. These tropes are super fun. I definitely would be happy building a party out and having one of these two on my lineups. Doesn't matter which. I think maybe Echo offers a bit more versatility, whereas Freya's a bit more hardy. So it's like there's equal write-offs for the other. Whereas I think there's pros and cons to both, but you could swap them any day. Am I crazy for having them? Do you think that there's one that clearly stands out above the other?
No, not absolutely. In my mind, I would call them in tiers. I think there are two characters at the top that are the most interesting, that are probably the best. Then there's a combination of probably another 2 or 3. Wait, I'm trying to get to 8. Am I doing this right? And then the bottom 3. So I kind of feel like that there's, like, in my mind, 2 elite characters. There's kind of a bottom, like the third tier is Eco, Quina, and Freya, in any order. I don't care. And then those middle 3 are like a different tier, right? So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's how I would look at it. But you did end up with 2 summoners, didn't you?
I did, because you can't have too many.
Wait, how did that work? So I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who was my fourth pick? I don't know.
I would have to run through it again because.
Yeah, hopefully I have it written down somewhere. Anyways, I don't know exactly, but essentially I was just asking. Like, in my mind, there's a third tier: Eco, Freya,
I think it's our boy that we all love and cherish. If you know what I mean.
Oh, interesting. Oh, so then maybe I'm okay. I will find this list at some point. Let's not worry about that. Right now. Let's just talk about what's going on today. So we'll start out with Eco Carol. So the backstory. So the village of Madame Sari was once a thriving town populated by summoners. The Terran airship Invincible destroyed the town for Garland to remove the possible threat of Gaia's Eidolions, and the most of the community perished. Eco's parents were some of the last survivors, and after her parents perished as well, Eco was raised by her grandfather. When he died, Eco was left to live in Madame Sari with a company of Muggles. One of them, Mog, always travels with her, and the two traded friendship ribbons. She and the Mog frequent the dwarves' town of Conde Petit to steal food. The anatomy of a character is Eco is it has green eyes, has a small summoner horn on her forehead, a blue hair cropped from the shoulder with a ribbon tied into a large bow on top. Eco's jewel is called the memory earring. In trance, Eco's horn lengthens, the skin turns sky blue, her hair and sleeves turn light green, her bow, crest, or chest plate, pants, and bottom become white, and her turtleneck and bodysuit change to a soft purple. Probably don't need to give all that information. That seems unnecessary. And her archetype is the summoner. So there's the backstory of little Eco.
Yeah, kind of a little sassy character. The Mogs are super cute, and it's I think her design's like really funny. Like, there's the one scene where she gets like stuck on a tree or something, and she's like hanging there. It's like this is adorable. This is straight from a cartoon. This character is one of those characters to be thrown in there for the joking sake of it. Kind of has a sadder backstory, but it's a
but she doesn't like she doesn't pity herself or feel bad for herself, right? She's like, oh yeah, my grandpa died, and now I just have these friends,
she's like
and
the
I'm kind of sad and I miss
Cloud,
them,
right? Like, upbeat, happy, just like living her life. I'm gonna cook some food today, so I went and steal this food from these dwarves because screw them, they're dumb.
Sure. Yeah, I have autonomy, Awesome. Great. That's good. Good job, you. Then we'll get to my third round pick, which is Albert Steiner. So I think he's that bottom tier of, man, like, I'm just like getting beat up on the podcast today. Our duplex, like the other side of the duplex, roof's coming on, so there's probably like hammering. People are ringing my doorbell.
You're getting full. I'm not hearing anything, but you're definitely you're probably getting the both ends.
Oh, it's just like I'm like, I can't win. Guys, what are we doing? The rest of the day, when I'm not talking, no one's at my house. It's quiet. It's peaceful. Good job, me. Anyways, on to, again, my third round pick, Albert Steiner. Backstory. When Steiner, why did I pick him here? Because I believe he was the last character in that second tier. So it was part of my strategy with the first overall pick. I'm like, I'm going to play it this way because I think Steiner at 3 is a very solid choice. I think he could be a top 2-round pick, right? He's fun, he's interesting, and I'll tell you why. So backstory. Steiner was a child. He was caught in a war and was saved by an Alexandrian knight, inspiring him to become one. He joined Alexandrian army at age 16, and when he was 23, he dueled with Alexandria's best swordman, Beatrix, and won due to sheer luck. As a reward, his request to become a knight of Pluto was granted, and he goes on to become their captain. The anatomy of the character, Steiner is a tall and stocky build. He wears a traditional silver color armor plate, a pair of shorts, and a helmet with a feather. Even his shoes and gloves are armor. Steiner carries a broadsword on his back, fastened in place with a leather strap. Steiner movement fields are accompanied by a clanking noise due to his armor. This is not present during battle. The army earns his nickname Rusty from Zidane, and the Red Mage in Lindbaum advises him to scrape off the rust. Oh, okay, cool. And his archetype is Knight.
Yeah. He's funny. He's takes his job very seriously and needs to protect the princess at all costs, and is constantly just like left out hanging when it comes to the butt of jokes or whatever. And yeah, but he doesn't let him get him down. He just does his job, does it with pride, and always takes himself 100% seriously. And I think as kids I didn't really like Steiner. I can't really speak for everybody. I feel like I was like, Steiner's just like this stuffy jerk. I don't like him. He's lame.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you're like, nah, I like him. He is super endearing. He doesn't let stuff get down to him. Like he kind of constantly puddles and like stumbles or whatever, but he never lets it get him down. He's just constantly just like, no, I will always do everything the best of my abilities, no matter what. And he's super endearing, and I grown to really respect him and love him as a character. So I think they did a really good job with him.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's me as well. Like that's why I think he's in that kind of that upper tier. He's kind of one of the most important 5 characters in the story. So again, getting him at 5, easy pick on my. I got some trivia notes I'll run through. Then we're done. And we'll get out of here. And we'll call this a show. And you might see us a lot or a little in August. We're not entirely sure. So go from there. So trivia. Steiner is designed as a knight, a traditional Final Fantasy job, to keep with the game's theme of returning to the series' root. Early in development, apparently before Beatrix was created, Steiner was the captain of the Paladin Corps and was less bumbling, but is still a comical character, with a tendency to follow the Queen's orders literally rather than using common sense, such as when he should have ordered him to charge forward, he'd refuse to turn around when the others warn him there's a bomb behind him. Okay, all right. Steiner would have been ordered to look for Garnet after she reported missing from the castle. Steiner was envisioned as being able to enter a room in the castle, unlike Zidane, who was playable in the castle before this. The previously inaccessible rooms containing gear and items the player could then equip. A dummied piece of dialogue between Steiner and Morid at Observatory Mountain posits that the King of Alexandria had died in a war against Burmecia. Morid points out that Alexandria and Burmecia waged many wars before the airship revolution, and how there was no single clear-cut aggressor-aggravator, the black and white Steiner thinking. No clear-cut aggressor aggravating. Oh, I see. There's no clear-cut aggressor aggravating the black and white thinking Steiner. Okay, cool. And in the French version of the game, he is named Edward Albert Steiner, Edward being a more common first name than French people then would know better than Adalbert.
That's fair. I mean, Adalbert is a good name in general, so most of us just call him Steiner.
Yeah, Adalbert. So his name was Adalbert Steiner in France. They called him Edward because that's a less stupid name than Adalbert. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah. It's a smart change.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Cool. Yeah. So with that, other than me kind of just bumbling through those last couple trivia points, editing could be my friend, but
no, I think it was fun. We're kind of just
no, don't make good content, you hack. Okay, sure, I won't.
Man, whatever. I think that I'm really interested to see if anyone is going to actually write a list of what their top 10 or their top 5 rankings of their Final Fantasy characters. I'd love to see that, especially if you want to leave some notes, comments, concerns, any things that you're kind of thinking or whatever. Want to see.
Yeah. Or, you know who's coming up, right? Like, one of the top 4 guys is your favorite. So we've got, in any particular order, Vivi, Garnet, Dagger. Those are the same people. Zidane and
Amaranth.
Really? Amaranth? Maybe Amaranth was in round 4 and Stein?
I think he was. I threw in Discord what I think that tiers list were.
The order was?
Yeah.
Okay, anyways. We'll do this afterwards. We don't have to do it now. We'll, go from there. Cool.
Yep. Well, you guys, I guess we should wrap this up and say goodbye.
Certainly, yes. We'll do that. We'll get out of here for today and talk to you guys in a couple weeks. And I don't know, we're probably talking about a movie. So pretty exciting stuff. We're probably talking about a lot of movies in August, potentially. So we'll see you then. I don't think we missed anything. And we'll see you guys back for Disc 2 before September. So I think we're back in August.
Disc 3 before September.
Sorry, Disc 3. Yeah, I fell apart there at the end. All right, bye.
See you.